you. We appreciate that. But, wear one tomorrow, though, okay? Because tomorrow's going to be your first day. If you'd like to work here as a broker. Would you like that, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Good. We couldn't be happier. So, welcome. Was it as easy as it looked?
No, sir. No, sir, it wasn't.
Good luck, Chris.
Thank you.
Welcome to Road to Billions podcast, the mentality of an entrepreneur. With your host, Moise Bertrand.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It is your host, Moise Bertrand, the Road to Billions podcast. It's been an amazing journey, you guys, and I appreciate every last one of you guys for listening and tuning in, of course, because you guys are the ones that make the podcast streams go up, and you guys are the ones that I talk to. You know, every last one of you guys who listen, like I always mention to you all the time in the beginning of every intro, I appreciate you. You get me? Pursuit of Happiness is my favorite movie. I had to go ahead and drop that intro in there just to remind you guys everything does get better after a while. You know, you might be going through a hard time in your life right now, but, you know, that's why we keep faith, and that's why we always keep things true to ourselves. You know, we don't lie to ourselves, and we always know that whatever's going on in life, you know, it always gets better. You know, however you may look at it, whatever situation you might be in, it always gets better. But pretty much I just want to jump into this real quick and give you guys a couple tips and hacks when buying real estate or even just renovating a property. In every property, pretty much, I tell people keep the same materials. So eventually, if you have property number 2, you know, you'll just take the materials from property number 1, such as the paint, the doors. Sometimes if you ever bought, you know, extra doors, the lights, you know, you want to keep the same lights in every property. And even though you may not have extra, you know, left over, it's always good to keep extra, you feel me? Or just to buy everything as the same. So if you do have one that breaks and the other, if one other thing needs to get replaced, you always have a surplus. But like I was mentioning, paint is the number one thing you're going to spend money on, both inside and outside. And unless you're doing a customizable house, you always want to keep things the same. And that's one of the things I tell people all the time will save you tons of money, tons of headaches. Because you might look at a color and you might think it's beige, and it has a whole literally it has a whole specific name to it, right? And that's one of the things that kind of fucked my head up, because I'm like, God damn, it's so many colors. You know, I just thought it was red, blue, orange, you know, this. But I know when you start getting into interior designing and certain things like that, it really gets down to like the T. You feel me? And I'm grateful for it because I'm learning a lot more. But that was one of the things I noticed that I was spending, you know, shit ton of money for. I was just like, man, you know, I'm going to keep the same color in every property now and, you know, move bucket to bucket from every property. And sometimes you want to make a property, you know, different from the other property, so you might spend extra on some different type of paint. But if you are rehabbing a property and you're going to keep it, it's best just to use the same paint in every property. You get me? Just to make things a lot easier for yourself. Now, as far as the people you have working on every property, that's kind of hard, because when people see that you do projects on more than one property, in my opinion, they start to change. And I feel like you should always interchange contractors and handyman and plumbers and electricians, just for the simple fact that not everybody is going to be proud of your success. And sometimes they might even set you up for failure, right? Because what I notice a lot of times is I would grandfather certain prices, what, you know, people I work with. And once they start seeing me, you know, do a little bit more projects here and there and recommending people to them, it's as if their prices change, you know, going up $2 or some shit. And you might be like, $2, that's a square foot, you know, so now they charging $3 a square foot. I'm like, damn, what happened to the $250? Or they're not as lenient. But I'm like, hey, listen, dude, you do remember that I kind of just gave you the push on your business. So when people start seeing that they're getting too high up and either, you know, making income or their company's growing, they start to forget who was there for them. And I tell people, don't forget about the little guys, or don't forget about the people who helped you came up. You feel me? And I say that with all honesty because it's kind of sad to see a lot of friendships and relationships get broken up over money or even just like miscommunication. And I tell people all the time, like, I'm a communicator. I'm not somebody you could just think you could talk to any type of way. That's for certain. But you are going to talk to me with respect. And that's one of the biggest things I try to, emphasize to people, that I'm going to work with you. If I fuck up, I'll take accountability for it. If you fuck up, just take accountability for it and we move on. A lot of people are deep into their feelings, driven by emotions. And then sometimes they just want to get to like the negative part of the situation instead of the positive. And I tell my contractors, I'm like, listen, I'm not trying to take away from your business. I'm not trying to lowball you. I'm not trying to negotiate on your prices. But an estimate is an estimate. So if I ask you to do something for, I believe, in my opinion, a better price that's in my budget, you can't feel like I'm trying you. You can't feel like that. So I tell people all the time, whenever you're doing projects, you always want to have an interchangeable set of people you're working with, because that right there will cause so many delays in your projects. If you have one person you're working with, that person that slowed up your project 2-3 weeks just to the fact that they're in their feelings, or they may not be in their feelings. They may have a family situation that you can't even say, you don't want to get into that. You just be like, okay, cool. But that could take weeks at a time, and that could just deter you from your project timeline. And everything happens for a reason, you guys, obviously, because when things like that happen, I usually find somebody who's an even better contractor, even better handyman, even better electrician, so forth. So it always works out for the better. But when you're in the process, it's kind of a tough pill to swallow, right? You always like, damn, I got to wait on dude. So I tell people, have a set of everything. And it's not no disloyalty. It's just having, just a backup person, right? And always making sure that backup person does what the other person could do better, or not the same, but if anything better, right? So you don't want to find somebody who's going to do it for a really cheap price just because it sounds good, because that's how you're going to get your ass fucked up. You want to do something for cheaper, go around other people, not pay the real price, you will get bitten ass. And that's what happens to a lot of people in the game. It happened to me, and I learned my lesson early on, very early. Just paying people, this bullshit, this bullshit work. So always have an interchangeable list of list of contractors and people you work with, and make sure you verify their work already before betting on them on a project. So that's that. So first things first, always keep the same paint in every property, both inside and out. You might be like, oh, no, Mo, I want to change it up. Just keep it simple, man, because you're going to have a lot more paint left over, and then you won't have to buy as many gallons to add on to that, the difference of paint that needs to get, finishing up the house, or, just having it alongside the bedroom or something like that for storage for the later use. So you always want to make sure you hold on to that. The lights are the same thing, like I said. And once you start having those things set in place, you want to move on to the kitchen. So the kitchen, I tell people all the time, Hampton Bay is probably the best cabinets you're going to find, because they're usually white, and majority of properties you will go into nowadays, you will see white cabinets, with either a different type of accent color handle. And those white cabinets are pretty much Hampton Bay, unless they're customizable cabinets. And that's only just to fill in like spaces and gaps and stuff like that if it's customizable. But I try to keep the same cabinets, because I remember on a project I had to fill in the cabinet and it was missing a little itty bitty space. And I was like, man, I have this Hampton Bay cabinet that I couldn't return back to Home Depot because they wouldn't accept it, because it was already out the box and it was already going up on the wall. But I ended up changing my color scheme against the wall. So that was an extra cabinet I had, right? And it fit right perfectly. It fit perfectly right into the square. And that was that. We just had to use a filler, of course, in on the side of the cabinet just to fill that little space in. But other than that, it was definitely like a plug and play puzzle, right? So I tell people, try to keep everything the same. Same kitchen, same sink. And you might be able to play around with the bathroom a little bit, because that's where people feel more comfortable at. At the end of the day, people feel the most comfortable in their bathroom and in both their living room, right? So you got to make sure these places are comfortable. Now, when someone goes to bed and stuff like that, obviously that's a place we all want to deem number one safe haven. But I'm talking about where people majority spend their time at. We're going to keep it real. The bathroom, taking a shower, using the bathroom as well, brushing their teeth, looking in the mirror. And, obviously coming back day and night, having other people use their bathroom and shower. So that's all playing a part in how does this person feel about the bathroom. So if I tell you guys, always buy the same bathroom set, I'll be lying to you guys, because not every bathroom fits the same. You might have a lower roof, so you can't have the whole panels, because the panels might be different. You might not be able to put a tub, because it just don't look right where the tub is too small, or it's too big, and you'd be like, you know what, I might just do a stand-up shower. So every bathroom is different. So I tell people all the time, like, the bathroom is where you can have a little leeway in and be a little bit creative at, but don't overdo the bathroom, because the kitchen is also where people spend their time in at, primarily the women. When you're looking at a house, when you're running a house, it's the women who make the decisions on the home based off the kitchen. So try to make sure you don't over budget yourself. Keep the kitchen simple as well. Make it nice, make it look cool. But just keep it modest. You don't have to overdo it. You don't have to underdo it. White cabinets, same sink, clear up the countertops, and use everything that you do in every project just the same. Because over time, you're going to build up pro member extra points with Home Depot. And, over time as well, you're going to notice that you're going to have a little bit more materials left over. So you're going to be able to build up your own little stock inventory. Oh, go grab the paint from this. Okay, cool. Yeah, I have an extra 3 cases of flooring. Okay, cool. And then the flooring doesn't have to change because you have the same color in every floor, right? So you're saving tons of money. Yeah, I got some quarter round. Boom, 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 boom. So you don't have to worry about nothing else. And I tell people that's one of the ways you can save tons of money in real estate, and also just making sure you have a different interchangeable set of workers that you work with, and just the paint wise. Now everything else is kind of up to you when it comes to like designing and rehabbing a home. I know some people want to add their own stilo to it. Some people want to do different things to it. So I just tell people, like, at the end of the day, like, have fun with it, but also just be modest with it as well. Now I know many times people may think about like real estate as being this tough thing to do, but it's really just, plug and play all the time. You might have every deal as a different type of deal, but the formula doesn't change. The formula don't change. ARV doesn't change. The rehab price or budget doesn't change. We kind of keep these things the same just to make sure that we don't fall out of line out the cycle. And sometimes people fall out of line out the cycle, and then they're thinking to themselves too much about everything that could go wrong instead of everything that can go right. So when I'm telling you guys this little piece of advice and tips, it may not be, something you pay for, but this is $1 million worth of game. This is something that a lot of people overlook. This is something that a lot of people fail to think about. And when I tell you guys, I'm giving you guys this simple game, these things are simple, but it gets the job done. I tell people all the time, man, if somebody don't like me, it's because they don't like me for themselves. They never got a chance to understand the way of my way of thinking. And that's not for me to sit there and be like, hey, can you understand me? It's not for them to understand me. It's not for me to make them understand. It's only for me to continue on my path and, doing the things I feel like is right. So at the end of the day, like, we work on the things we love. And I tell people, once you start falling in love with your process, you start learning little things. You start learning little things that work for you. And the same things that could work for me could probably work for you. And if it doesn't, that doesn't mean it's a failure. That doesn't mean you're not meant to do it. It just means that you might need to find your way of doing it. In other words, your sauce. So I appreciate you guys for listening to this real quick podcast episode. I know it wasn't much, but I try to keep my podcast episodes short because, a lot of people have short attention spans. So I'm just being real. People don't want to sit there and listen to my voice for 30 minutes, even though some people might try to say, yeah, I can, but I feel like I can't listen to myself for 30 minutes, even though I could talk to myself all day. But at the end of the day, man, listen to my other episodes. If you have any questions about real estate, feel free to shoot me a DM. I've been posting a lot more with my meta glasses on TikTok and both Instagram. Instagram is weird, man. People on Instagram, all they do is just watch. But a lot more on TikTok. So if you haven't followed me on TikTok, I will put my TikTok name in my caption. I believe it's billionaire_moist. So if that's not it, it'll probably pop up as billionaire_mo. But other than that, once again, I appreciate you guys for listening to Road to Business Podcast. It's been an amazing journey. Subscribe, rate, and review, and you guys take care.